Grace and peace, grace and peace. Welcome to Truth Seekers with Randy McFord. This is the channel where I help seekers of the truth find the truth in the Word of God. This is step 3 in my sermon preparation, note taking. Note taking. If you see in my previous videos, we talked about prayer before and during the sermon prep. Step 1 in the sermon preparation is consuming the text. That is when I'm reading the scriptures multiple times. I'm reading it over and over again in the translation that I preach in. I preach from the New King James Version, but I would also read it from the ESV, from the NIV, New American Standard Version. I may dive into the uh, I said NIV, and I might dive into other translations as well, just depending on if I'm struggling with a verse or two. So so here is and in step 2, we talked in step 2 of sermon preparation, we talked about engaging devotionally with the text. This is where I just get my I try to look at the scriptures devotionally, see what God is saying in the text, and so that it could minister to my heart. Um, and step 3, which is the bulk of the sermon preparation, is the note taking. And in the note taking, as we see here on the left, the note taking process involves observation, interpretation, and application. Observation, interpretation, and application. So I'm just gonna uh, go through these points. So I have my iPad here, and most of my studies is from my iPad. I use my computer. I use blueletterbible.com, BibleGateway.com. I use Bible Hub. I also use the Logos Bible Study. So I use those websites for my Bible studies. I also have the physical book. I also have a ESV study Bible that I use, physical book. And depending on if it's theologically heavy, I have my systematic theology. I have two of them, one by Chuck Swindoll and the other one by Wayne Grudem. So I have those as well, just in case if I'm going to touch on some deep theological issues. All right. I have my Bible dictionary. Um, so I also have physical books as well. But before I get into the physical books, my first thing I want to do in a note-taking part is observation. I just want to see what's there, right? So before I go into commentary, before I go into dictionary, I want to see what is there. Now I want to share something with you here on the left side of the screen. And this is something that I got. This is a sheet of paper that I have from a book called Grasping God's Word, the third edition. And that is a book to teach on how to study the Bible, right? How to study the Bible is very thick. It's a textbook on how to study the Bible. And so this is a basic tool that I like to use for observation. So as we can see, step 1 is figure of speech. So what I'm looking for as I'm reading is figure of speech. So because I've been studying and doing this for a long time, when I'm in step 1, as I'm reading and reading and reading, some of those things already jump out at me while I was reading, right? Because I already know what I'm looking for, right? So the more you study the Bible, the more your observation skills will increase, right? The more you study, the more your skills of observation will increase, right? Then you will know what to look for. In the beginning, you don't know what to look for. It's going to be hard. It's going to take some time. It's going to be challenging. But the more you do it, the easier it is to be to find things, right? So so figure of speech. The one that I saw off the bat was where therefore be patient, brethren, verse 7, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waits patiently. So the farmer, so James is using a farmer as a figure of speech, as a metaphor on how the believer should wait, or should I say an analogy? He's using it as an analogy of how the believer should wait, right? How the believer should wait. And so that is an example of a figure of speech. Also conjunctions. Conjunctions are and, but, for, therefore. So therefore is a conjunction. So based on everything that is said from verse 1 through 6, therefore be patient, right? Therefore be patient. So based on the context of verses 1 and 6, therefore be patient. And then he goes into encouraging on how to be patient. Then you look at verbs, past, present, past, present, and future verbs, right? We have that. Um, we have dialogue. Is there a dialogue that's going on in the text, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Conditional clauses. A clause can be present, can present the condition by which some action or consequence will result. Often such statements use an if-then framework, although the English, in the English, the then is often left out. So these are consequences. So here we have verse 9 is an example of a consequence. Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned, right? Lest you be condemned. So that's a conditional clause. Lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. We have another one. But let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into judgment, right? So we have consequences for these specific acts, right? Then we have here actions or roles of God, right? And one of the things that stood out to me primarily here is that God is a judge, right? God is a judge. We see here, um, talking about fall into judgment, right? We see here condemnation. At least you be condemned, right? The judge is standing at the door, right? The coming, un, wait until the coming of the Lord. That's talking about when God comes to judge, right? This you is talking about the rich. Um, etc. So I like to go through all of these. Some things may apply, some things may apply, and some things may not. So I like to go through all of these and see what I observe as I'm going through the text. Now, aside from that, another thing I want to do in my observation, I'm still on observation. Another thing I like to do when I'm observing the text is um, who is speaking, right? So I know James is speaking, and who is James speaking to, right? Now, I noticed that James is speaking to two audiences. James is speaking to the rich. So come now, you rich, right? And then James is speaking to Christians, right? So he's speaking to the rich and he's also speaking to Christians. So here we see the rich. Here we see that he's speaking to the Christians. He's encouraging the Christian. So also when I look at who the author is talking to, what is he saying to them, right? What is their general thing that he's saying to them? Now, for to the rich, he's speaking of judgment, right? He says, weep and howl, right? So he's speaking of judgment. Generally speaking, to the believer, he's encouraging them to be patient, right? He's encouraging them. So that's the general consensus that he is doing to the believer. He is encouraging them. And so that's so I like to ask the question: who is speaking? Who are they talking to? And what are they saying? Right. So he's and then if he is speaking judgment on the rich, why is he speaking judgment to the rich? Right. And I see this here. Let me see. Why is he causing judgment to the rich? Indeed, verse 4, indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out. So the reason why judgment and condemnation is coming on these rich people is because they are oppressing the poor. These people, these laborers, was mowing the lawns and they kept back the money by fraud. And so these reapers cried out to the Lord, and the Lord heard them and responded to them. Also, it says, you have condemned and murdered the just. The just is talking about the innocent. So they are innocent, yet these rich oppressors condemn them and murder them, right? So therefore, so because of the condemnation that is going to be upon the rich oppressors, therefore be patient, brethren, right? Therefore, so God is going to handle them, but in the meantime, be patient, okay? Be patient. So that is the gist of what he's saying in the second half of this context, right? Verse 7 through 12, to be patient. And there's also some warning here. There's also some correction here to the believer, right? Do not grumble against one another, right? Do not grumble against one another, brethren. So also what I like to do in my observation, I'm still on observation. Also, what I like to do in observation is look at repetitive words, right? So what words are repeating here? What are some repetitive words? So I have brethren here, right? So brethren is repeating, brethren. So we see these times that he's talking to the Christian, brethren, brethren. I think it was one more, one, two, three. I think there was four. Okay, my brethren. There we go. So brethren, right? And then also there's some words that are repeating that have similarities, right? So there are some repeating similar words, right? So they may not be the same exact word, but they are similar. For example, patient, right? Be patient, right? And what is similar to that is so we have patience, right? And then we have blessed who endure, and then perseverance. So all of these are similar, and it brings to the point that James is really encouraging them to be patient in suffering, to endure, to persevere, right? To be patient and to persevere, right? Another part of the observation is I like to see, okay, how is God being represented here? Do I see the Trinity? Do I see the Godhead, right? So I see the Lord of hosts. And the Lord of Sabaoth is the Lord of hosts, which talks about the Lord of armies, the Lord of angelic armies, right? So I might do a word search on that to get more information on the Lord of hosts. Why did James say the Lord of hosts? Why did he say any call God by any other thing? Why he specifically say the Lord of hosts, right? That's how I like to study. I like to know, why is this reference of God made the Lord of hosts, right? Um, Also, the Lord, they spoke in the name of the Lord, right? The coming of the Lord is at hand until the coming of the Lord. So I see some repetition there. Um, so the Lord is coming, so they should be patient until the coming of the Lord, right? The end intended by the Lord, right? So there's some things that I see there. So all of this is during observation, right? During my observation. This is what I'm looking for in a text. Now interpretation is going deeper, right? So now observation is what the text says. Interpretation is, what does it mean by what it says? What does it mean by what it says? What does these words, what does this verse mean? And so with that, I do word study. I go into um my cross references. I go into my uh commentary, study Bible, and seeing what does it mean, right? What is the cultural context, the historical context? What does the early church say about these matters, about this specific doctrine or this specific chapter? So that's so all of this is going to take me maybe 10 hours, the minimum. This step right here takes me about 10 hours, right? Takes me about 10 hours. And I will show you the finished product because I already preached this text already. I'm kind of behind on this project, but I'm going to show you the finished product. So I do interpretation, observation, interpretation, and then application. Now, an application is, what does this mean in the context of the believers in my church, right? I'm a pastor of the church that God has entrusted me with, the body of believers that God has given to me, right? I'm a pastor of the local assembly. So I have the observation, I have the interpretation. Now, how does this apply in the context of the people that God has given me to minister to preach to, right? What are they going through? What are their needs? What do they need to be corrected on? What do they need to be encouraged by? Um, how can this apply to their current circumstances and situations? So I'm always being faithful to the text, right? The text mean what it means, but it may have multiple applications to the unbeliever, to the believer, to the suffering Christian, um, you know, to the backsliding or the person that's falling away or what have you, right? So there's many applications, but what the text mean, it only means one thing, right? So that is my process, and this takes me about roughly um 10 hours of work, and that's not including step one and step two, right? And so here's my finished product. So I'm going to show you something real quick. This is book of the Bible. So I have the book of James. So I have all of this. I have 66 books in here. I have all 66 books in here. And here's James. And so this is it right here. Let me see. This is it. Yep. So this is all of my study. This is not even this is not the sermon. This is just the study of the text, right? So this is the study of the text, and then these are additional notes because everything can't fit on this one page, but these are the additional notes, right? These are the additional notes. All right, so like here, for example, I would copy and paste the text, right? Now I try to write my notes in a way that it can also be a rough draft. It can also be like a so when I'm writing my notes here, um this plays as okay, I got an idea of where I'm going, right? I got an idea of where I'm going. I haven't done the outline yet, but I have a rough idea of where I'm going, right? So this is all of my notes. Um, and I'm asking the text questions and I'm writing the answers down and I'm looking it up, et cetera, right? So this is my note processing system. So all of this is 10 hours of work. All of this is about 10 hours of work, right? Copy and pasting scriptures, et cetera, right? So, hope you guys enjoyed that. Please leave a comment below. What is your process? What did I miss? Um, Observation, interpretation, and application. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any further ideas, and stay tuned for part 4. God bless and have a good one.